This is Cav's 2007 E86 for all you BMW nerds out there. These cars are not Supras. In fact, the new Supra is in fact one of these cars. The new Supra is not a real Supra. It's just a new version of one of these, which BMW doesn't want to make for some reason, and it's frustrating because I love these cars. This is an N52 powered coupe that sits in a weird bracket of space because the Z4s always come out in between generations of halo cars for BMW, such as the Z3. Prior to this, it ran E30 rear suspension, but it had E36 front suspension, so it's kind of in this weird void. This guy, if you get into an M version, at this time, the N54 was out. However, the M still had an S54. Again, it's in this weird time frame because the E92s came out this time. It doesn't have E92 suspension, it has E46 suspension. This is what you get. This is a purest driving car. Naturally aspirated Z4.
Track.
By the way, I'm a terrible driver.
Okay.
So this is Cav, and we're in his Z4.
Oh yeah.
As far as modifications go, it is stock-ish.
OEM plus.
OEM plus.
Yeah.
And a really mean sounding exhaust. God, damn,
nice.
It sounds good. So be cognizant of that. We are good to go. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Baby wants to play. Gotta heat these tires up, so. Oh my goodness, this N52 is just a solid motor.
It's a little slow, but the power band is so smooth.
Is there a rev match?
No. You gotta do it.
It's got good throttle response though, man. We're gonna kind of get it warmed up. But the pedal spacing is fantastic. Oh
yeah, it's great.
Kind of barreling this corner right here. Yeah, there's some lift-off oversteer in this car. That's awesome. Oh my goodness. Oh, look at this. Wow, the rotation's fantastic. So the wheelbase is about 98 inches long, which is awesome for rotation. Cav, you're how tall are you?
I'm 6'3".
You're 6'3"?
Yep.
So, Cav cannot sit in a Miata, and I don't blame him for not wanting a Miata because this is badass. It's a coupe. I'm not personally a convertible guy. I've owned 5 Miatas prior, and I don't really like convertibles because Miatas are just really awesome cars. Oh my goodness. Man, this thing handles fantastically. That all being said, this car for what it is, it's a very stiff chassis. It is basically just a driver's focused car. Like, it's obviously not an M car itself, which is fine because this, oh my god, dude, this car handles awesomely. Like, it's very communicative. I'm driving it pretty much with the drivetrain right now. Like, it's talking to me via the drivetrain, which is great. So let's see, get a little, oops. It has some lift-off oversteer, which I actually like. So if you're in a corner, you're barreling in, and we're rubbing a little bit. If you're barreling into a corner and you're starting to understeer, which this car has really no hint of it, man, that rotation is awesome. Your brakes are stock, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's got performance pads, but calipers are stock.
So a little bit of understeer right there, you lift off and it just rotates in. That's fantastic. It just rips right here. I'm pinned right now. I let off a little bit. There we go. This car wants you to commit into a corner, because if you're not committed in that corner, it's gonna snap back on you. Which I kind of like that bit of danger. Oh my gosh, I can't even talk about how good this car is because this car is freaking awesome, man. I will say your brakes, I'm not going full out because the brakes are kind of having a little bit of a hard time. And I'm going to go easy on them, so we're just going to kind of use some momentum right there. Just kind of just chuck it in and just pray that it's fine.
Yeah, it's totally a momentum car.
Don't ever get rid of this car.
I don't plan on it.
Any plans otherwise besides the suspension itself?
Not really. I'm gonna drive it until it blows up and then drop an LS in it.
Chassis super stiff. I will say the one thing that I've noticed about this car is the steering. It's a little light because I think they went from the hydraulic steering to the electric power steering. This is kind of their first iteration of this steering. So the EPC was usually kind of, people talk shit about it, especially in the 3 Series, saying, oh, it's lost its steering feel, because BMW is always known to have this really robust, heavy steering. If you feel, you know, the E82s, you feel all those old 3 Series E92s, they're insanely hard. It's like, does this even have power steering? I feel like it's crapping out on me. Anyway, so this has EPC, it's a little light. So the deal is, I'm driving this car not just with the steering, but mainly the chassis. The chassis is the highlight of this whole experience. The motor's fantastic, by the way. I know you're like, it's not fast, but the power delivery of this N52 is a good linear power band. I don't mind the electric power steering at all in this car. Like, it is actually really, it's just a good car to where I know what it's doing with the tires. I know what it's doing with the chassis itself in terms of rotation. With this short wheelbase, it's really awesome because I assume that you don't have an alignment done, do you?
Yeah, I do.
Is it a little bit more aggressive alignment?
It's a pretty aggressive alignment.
It carries in really nicely. I can imagine these cars with that really long front end that it understeers a lot with stock alignment, just because that's how cars are set up. They're just set up to understeer from factory. This car is probably no exception. But with this kind of really aggressive alignment, the car likes to rotate really well into the corner. Like, it just has so much more to give mid-corner. Like, you can sit here, then you can kind of get in there a little bit more, and then, like, if you're not going exactly where you want to through the apex, you can just, like, lift off, let it carry, swing the ass around, and it's doing its thing. It is also very planted, too. I'm sure if I pushed it a little bit harder, obviously I'm not going to, just because of the brakes, it would get a little bit of oversteer. But it's not gonna snap on you like you would think, because these cars do have a reputation to have some snap oversteer. And that's because it has a short wheelbase. Any car with a short wheelbase is gonna be a little bit dancier, and that's fine. It just sounds great too. I love the way this car sounds.
Yeah, it has so much spirit.
This is good. I love this. The shifter's great too. The shifter, the transmission, everything's really tight. It's just toy on this car. Thank you for letting me drive this.
For sure, man.
This is fun. Very fun. It's very playful. It's not too serious, but this is a seriously capable car, though. I'll say, just with the chassis itself, whatever you decide to do, obviously keep this car forever. You have 95,000 miles on this guy.
Yeah, I bought it with 74.
You've had it a year?
Yep.
Good for you.
Yeah, I drive the piss out of it.
Drive it, man. Enjoy it. These N52s are super reliable anyways.
I know, they're pretty low compression and can run forever.
We're gonna go ahead and put this guy on the tier list. I'm in love with it. I want one of these cars.
Welcome back to the tier list. Let's talk about Cav's 2007 Z4 3.0 SI, otherwise known as the E86. This chassis itself is a true coupe, and it's very rigid, and it only weighs 3,075 pounds, with a naturally aspirated N52 B30 engine outputting 261 horsepower and 232 foot-pounds of torque, and it is butter smooth. The N52 has such good character behind it. It's not the caliber of an S54. However, for just being an everyday engine for the BMWs of that era, it is a very good motor, and with some tuning you can probably output around 270 rear-wheel horsepower in this car if you did a few bolt-ons and a tune. Power delivery itself was very smooth and very linear, as a straight six should be. Torque curve was kind of died off at the top end, but that's where the horsepower kicked in at the top, and you just rev it on out. For the weight of this chassis, that engine is perfect. The transmission was extremely tight with that ZF 6-speed. Who doesn't love a good ZF 6-speed? That thing was robust, really notchy, very good 6-speed transmission. The clutch itself was solid. Heel toe rev matching was very good because the pedals were spaced perfectly. Handling was amazing. So this car is not stock in the handling department. There is some suspension mods with a little bit more of an aggressive alignment. That chassis is extremely rigid, and I love how the characteristics were of the car. It was very welcoming because I thought it was going to be a little bit snappy. It wasn't. Say I was in a corner, mid-corner, as I had mentioned, the lift-off oversteer was a lot of fun. This car just wanted to be chucked into a corner, and it felt very nicely planted until you lifted off the throttle. Then the Aston would kind of rotate just a little bit. It would just scoot along, and you just pin it right back on the throttle, and it is set up perfectly. The Pilot Sport 4S's on this car held up very well, and I don't think that they even reached a high temperature just because of the weight. The brakes, on the other hand, they were lacking because they are not the M Sport brakes. The only other thing missing besides that is an LSD. This car with an LSD and trackpad would be a really good daily driver and also occasional track car. Let's talk about that electric power steering. I was not a fan of the feel because it's very light, and BMW did lose their way as far as this era of BMWs with the E90s, the E86s, E85s, the 5 Series of the time. They all kind of had this really numb steering because people always complained about that really heavy hydraulic steering from BMW, and BMW kind of overboosted that. It was forgettable at best. The way you drove it was with the chassis and the throttle. Overall, the E86 was a phenomenal car. It was everything I wanted it to be and a little bit more than that. And this really made me want one of these cars. Thing is, they're extremely rare because they didn't really sell that much back then. So if you have a chance to get your hands on one, absolutely go for it. It is something that is going to appreciate very well down the road. So let's put this guy on the tier list. We are going to put the E86 right here in front of Charles's MRS. In conclusion, I know I'm a little bit BMW biased, but this car had everything checked off the boxes for what I wanted it to be. Cav, thank you so much for letting me drive. I can't wait to see what you do with this car. Maybe we can do a version 2.0 and maybe you'll end up in S-Class. I think with an LSD and some good brakes, I could have wailed on it a little bit harder, and this car would definitely top off an S-Class somewhere. How do y'all feel about this placement of the Z4? Do y'all think it's justified? Let me know in the comments. If you made it this far, thank you so much for giving me your time. I hope I earned your subscription, and I hope I earned your like. Until the next track day, I'll see you around. Bye.
This, you don't have any reverb, Doug DeMuro, so f*** you. I'm better than you because I got the reverb.